Hi, this is Chris Croft here from Successful Trainers, and in this video I want to give you some bad news, although hopefully you'll find it funny. Because the bad news is that you will have to travel, unless you're going to do all your training over Zoom, which of course is feasible, but you probably will have to travel. And travel brings its own unique issues. So I want to tell you 5 stories about what's happened to me while I've been travelling. I think they're all pretty funny, so I hope you find this amusing. But the main thing is, are you tough enough to put up with this kind of thing? Because you will have to travel, and I think that is one of the few downsides of being a trainer. So the first one is that I was staying at a bed and breakfast, and it had been booked for me by my daughter. She did a lot of bookings for me a while back. And she would ring up and she had certain requirements, like there's got to be parking, there's got to be Wi-Fi, it's got to be a double bed, because otherwise when you roll over you fall out of bed. So she had certain requirements she would ask for, and she had checked out that this bed and breakfast had these requirements. And when I got there, the husband gave me the keys, and so I went round to the sort of room and unlocked it and went in. It was all fine. So I'd been in there about 5 or 10 minutes. I was unpacking my stuff and there was a knock on the door. And when I opened it, it was the wife of this couple. And she said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Croft. I just want to check you were okay." And I said, "Yeah, it's all fine." And she said, "I just wanted to have a look at you as well." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I just thought you might be really fat." And I said to her, "Why did you think that?" And she said, "Well, the way that your secretary insisted on you having a double bed, I thought you might be really big and fat. So I just wanted to have a look." And I just thought, that is so bizarre. I mean, to want to see me because I was fat, and then to tell me that that's why she wanted to see me, I just thought that whole thing was quite extraordinary. But, you know, you've got to have a sense of humour about these things, and I'm sorry to disappoint her that I was normal-sized. So my second travel story is much shorter, and it was just to say that I was using SatNav, and it was in the early days when SatNav wasn't brilliant, and you would put in the postcode, but that was kind of all you had. And I was staying in a hotel in Newmarket. You'd think it'd be easy enough to find the Travel Inn or whatever it was. But I was driving quite late. I left home about 10 and I got there about midnight. It was really dark and really quiet and deserted. And the SatNav took me to a graveyard. So it just said, "And you have arrived." And I'm thinking, it's a graveyard. But anyway, luckily I zoomed out on the map on my iPhone and I could see that there was a main road and then there was a row of buildings, and then I was behind the row of buildings in a sort of back street where the graveyard was. And in between where I was and the main road was a few buildings, including the hotel where I was supposed to stay. So I was able to go back to the main road, turn left, go along there, and it was on the left. So I did find it, but I do remember thinking, this is now my life, isn't it? Driving around at midnight and ending up in a graveyard. Now, my third story, I stayed in a hotel in South London, and there was nowhere really decent to stay, and so I booked into this hotel that was suspiciously cheap. And I got there about sort of 11 p.m. because I just think, why get to a hotel early? You might as well, have your dinner at home and then travel. You could travel first thing in the morning, of course, but then you're going to be having to get up at the crack of dawn, and I'm not good at that. So I like to travel in the evening, get there about 11 or midnight, and then I can sleep and I can get up at 7:30 or 8 in the morning, have a nice cooked breakfast, and I'm ready for the course. So that was my plan as usual. So I got there about 11. And the lady at the desk said, "Oh, here you are, mate, there's your key." So I took my key and I went along all these corridors through the fire doors and things. Eventually found my room number. I guess there were probably about 50 rooms in this hotel. So anyway, I finally found the room, put the key in, opened the door. It was dark in there, switched on the light, and there was this big "Roo!" And it turned out there was a bloke in the bed. So when I switched on the light and barged in, this guy was sort of terrified. He was suddenly woken up from deep sleep and he sort of reared up out of the bed, and I went, "Whoa!" And he went, "Whoa!" And I sort of said, "Sorry, mate, sorry." And so I just shut the door and got out of there. Anyway, when I got back down to reception, I said to the lady, I went to room number 213 and there was a bloke in the bed, and she went, "Oh, sorry about that." And she just reached for another key and she went, "Try this one." And I just thought, great, how do I know if there's going to be somebody in this room? Of course there wasn't. I went in really carefully and really worried, and there wasn't. But the thing about that story, I think, is you don't want to be reminded about the fact that somebody has slept in that bed the night before you. In fact, 100 people have slept in that bed for the 100 nights before you get there. And I don't really like to think about that. And that one incident has made me a bit more aware of that. But, you know, such is life when you're travelling on the road. Now, my fourth story was I do stay in B&Bs rather than hotels quite a lot, because hotels are a bit soulless and often the food's not great for breakfast, whereas B&Bs, often you get to meet a bit of a character and they often cook you a really nice breakfast. Also with hotels you have to queue to book in and all that sort of thing I don't really like. So I quite like a nice bed and breakfast if I can. I think they're cheaper as well, but that's not why I do it, and sometimes they're not cheaper. You can stay in some really nice upmarket B&Bs for a similar price to a hotel. Anyway, I have found that a snag with some bed and breakfasts is that they can be really cold, particularly cottages out in the countryside. The room can be cold. And I stayed in one a while ago, and sure enough, the room was really, really cold. So I sneaked down to my car and I got my little fan heater that I travel with. And because you can leave everything in the boot of your car, just in case you need it. And so I had a fan heater there. So anyway, I sneaked it back up to the room. So it was probably about 10:30 or 11 in the evening. I'm in my room watching television and I switched on the fan heater. And there was this big boof sound and all the lights went out. And I just thought, oops, I think I've probably blown a fuse. So I unplugged the fan heater and put it away in my bag so nobody would see it. And just went to bed in the dark because the telly had switched off, everything had switched off. So in the morning, I come down to breakfast and they said, did your lights go off last night? I said, yes, they did, yes. And they said, you didn't plug anything in, did you? You didn't plug in anything big? And I was going, no, I don't think so. No, the lights just went off while I was watching telly. And they went, oh, okay. So what I did after that was, instead of having a sort of 2 kilowatt fan heater, I bought a little greenhouse heater that's got a thermostat, and it's only, 100 watts or something like that. And it just, rather than blowing hot air on you all night, this one just clicks in and clicks out when the room gets too cold. It's quite small, I can hide it in my bag and I can switch it on. It doesn't take too much current, so it doesn't blow up the electrical system of cottages. And I can leave it on next to my bed overnight and it just doesn't let the temperature go below freezing. So I'm like a tomato plant or something like that. I can have my little greenhouse heater just looking after me all night without the people knowing who run the B&B. Now, my final story actually is in several parts. It's just to say that you may well have to share your room with creatures. So I stayed in a really posh hotel in London once, and I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. And I thought, I'm sure and it was a mouse. Because the thing is, mice are completely silent. They just glide over the ground. And I saw one out of the corner of my eye, and it went behind the bin. So I thought, right, I'm going to catch it. So I sneaked up on the bin and I pulled the bin out of the way, and there was a mouse hole behind there, and the mouse was going in and out of its hole, and the people who cleaned the room had obviously just thought, stick a bin in front of it, nobody will know. So that was nice. And there was another place I stayed in just outside Bath, one of my favourite B&Bs actually, and I heard a very loud rustling noise in the night. There was a sort of sound, and it woke me up. It was really loud. I couldn't work out what on earth it was. And in the morning I found that the emergency bar of chocolate that I keep in my travel bag had been opened, and something had pulled the chocolate out from my bag. And I'm just hoping it was a mouse. I'm pretty sure it was a mouse, although I never found a mouse hole in that room. I searched behind the sofa, everywhere. I couldn't find how the mouse was getting in and out, but it must have been a mouse taking my chocolate. I did actually stay again in that hotel, and in fact I've been back there regularly. I really like it, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure there's a mouse. I did have a third experience with mice actually, where I was staying with a little old lady who runs a B&B outside Bath, a different one. And at one time when I got there were actually mouse droppings on my pillow. And I know they were mouse droppings because I know what they look like. And when I pulled the bed out from the wall and looked down behind, there was a whole load of chewed paper and things down on the floor in the corner of the room under the bed. The mouse was obviously assembling a nest down there. So that was pretty horrible. And I didn't stay at that B&B again. The mouse droppings on the pillow, that was too much even for me. But just while we're on insects, I just want to tell you 2 more stories, because the question is, are you tough enough to be a trainer? And one time I stayed in a hotel and there were lots of flies on the window. And I didn't really mind too much, so opened the window, got rid of them. But when I was in reception, I said to them, by the way, just so you know, I'm in room 17, there's quite a lot of flies. And the woman said, oh, I know, they're awful, aren't they? Last week they were in the bed as well. And I'm thinking, don't tell me that. Just say to me, oh, I'm really sorry, I'll get that sorted. Or, I'm really sorry, would you like to move? Don't tell me they were in the bed as well. Don't tell me that you haven't been checking on the room and fixing the problem. So that night, I was in that bed and I was thinking, oh, I'm sure I felt something crawling on my leg. Although I didn't actually see any flies in the bed, but ooh. So that was not great. So I didn't actually see any flies. But my final insect story, and this is the last of these stories, was I was staying in a B&B in, I think it was Harrow, it might have been Ealing, somewhere like that. And we were upstairs actually from an Indian restaurant, so that was a plus. But I went to brush my teeth at about midnight, and I went into the bathroom and just switched on the light, went in the bathroom, and I was brushing my teeth, and this little baby cockroach came out of a little hole next to the cold water tap. And it just came out happily, sort of learn its little feelers were going like that. And it suddenly saw me and it went, and its feelers went up and it froze. And then immediately quickly dashed back down into the little hole next to the cold water tap. And I assume it was coming out to eat the toothpaste off my toothbrush, because apparently cockroaches really like toothpaste. And I certainly found that when I went to the Amazon jungle on holiday, but that's another story. So I just thought, oh great, you know, in the dark, when I'm asleep, cockroaches are coming out of little holes and crawling around on my toothbrush. So I didn't stay at that B&B again, even though the Indian restaurant was brilliant. But the room above it, which was run by somebody else, I think, not good. So, insects, animals, weird B&B owners, that is going to be your life if you get into training. Unless you do Zoom, of course, and I think it is highly possible to earn a living doing only Zoom or doing mostly Zoom. I do believe that Zoom is here to stay. But it's kind of a lonely life travelling around the roads. I rather like it because you get the evenings to yourself, you get a bit of thinking time. But these are some of the aspects to consider if you decide to get into training. And as always, I do just want to say, if you're thinking of getting into training, give me a call and either me or one of my team will set up a meeting with me and we can talk. I can probably help you with lots of advice about is it a good idea or not, and if you do get into training, how to be successful at it. Because that is one thing I do know. I've been doing this for 20 years now and I know what it takes to be a successful trainer, and I can help you. I've got a coaching program. It's not free, but it's really worth doing, because if you want to get into something new, it's very hard to do it on your own. You'll make rookie mistakes, you'll be lonely, you'll put things off without having a coach to push you along the road. So I will help you to get there if you're interested. So give me a call on the link below if you want to know more about training. And even if you don't, that's fine. I hope you've enjoyed my stories of my travelling trainer's life. See you in the next video.